Hello, insatiable listeners. We have now concluded our season 9 of Fiery Fertility. I have heard from so many of you how much you love the season. And if you haven't listened to season 9, I highly recommend you check it out, whether you're in the market for kids or not. It's really a look into our feminine power and how to access that through nutrition, our healthcare choices, and owning our story. We are now on hiatus between seasons, and I'm on maternity leave. I will be back on January 15th with a brand new season 10, which will be a crash course in truths with food. We will look at the root causes of why we can't lose weight and how addressing these root causes, which aren't about willpower or discipline, can make us feel back in control of food, get off the all or nothing roller coaster, get us to stop monitoring ourselves all the time, and trust ourselves when the dessert cart comes. All with a main course of self-compassion and self-acceptance that doesn't have to mean resignation if you aren't comfortable in your body. When you can accomplish this freedom and consistency, weight loss can be a side effect. I'm so excited to share this season with you. And Truths with Food, my signature boutique group program, will begin in March 2020 for another round. In the meantime, enjoy these popular Insatiable rebroadcast episodes to help you thrive during the holiday season and set you up really well for 2020. Can you believe it? It's 2020. All right. I look forward to reconnecting in the new year.
What I often ask my clients to do is think in that very split second, in a year from now, how do you wish you would have handled this? And I like that because we're taking you out of the heat of the moment where that 15-year-old's ready to pop, and possibly rightfully so, and thinking a year from now, how will I wish I would have handled this? Yes. So when I teach this, I have this metaphor methodology. And one of the first ones we talk about is boundaries are like a muscle, meaning at first this is heavy. It's hard to lift.
You know battling food and your body doesn't work. You want to love and accept yourself. And because you're insatiable, you want results too. And wouldn't you know, you bring the same intensity to your life, wanting to maximize your time, potential, and experiences you have here on this beautiful and wondrous planet Earth. Fair warning, it will be a roller coaster, but for those insatiable, that's your prime time to thrive. We're here to say yes to the hunger of wanting it all. I'm your co-host, Ali Shapiro, a health coach who helps people end the losing battle of dieting and find a truce with food.
And I'm Juliette Berg, nutritionist, fitness expert, and the co-owner of Unite Fitness Studio franchise.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 49 of the Insatiable podcast, Healthy Boundaries for the Holidays with Randi Buckley. Her coaching clients say Randi is equal parts Pema Chodron, Sophia Loren, and Clint Eastwood, with a splash of George Carlin. And we couldn't agree more. From one-on-one coaching to executive training and consulting, Randi has made a difference in the lives of so many, including working with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, aka the Oscars, Canyon Ranch Spa, Stanford University, and many more that there's too many to list. In this episode, Randi talks about tactile ways to create boundaries in our lives around people, food, and exercise. The holidays can be a pain point of stress, overeating, and family drama. So let's talk about how to navigate this all with ease. Officially, Randi Buckley is an international coach, mentor, retreat leader, and writer whose work helps women find their truth and be at peace with it. She is the creator of Healthy Boundaries for Kind People, Maybe Baby, Depressed Like Me, and the Viking Women Workshop. She is mama to Raven, and her free time untangles whales from fishing gear in Monterey Bay. So we are here with Randi. Randi, I am so excited to have you. I have admired your work for years from afar, and I don't think I've ever told you this formally, but your nuanced and thoughtful and kind view of life has just been such a solace for me as I was building my business, and because the world is such a land of extremes out there. And you just always came through with this piercing truth. And so I just thank you for that.
I'm glad you experience it that way.
Yeah. So you guys are going to love this. And even though we're talking about healthy boundaries for the holidays and relatives, I think we could also easily call this how to not overspend, overeat, overdrink.
Boundaries deluxe. Yes.
Yeah. So, Randy, before we get into the details, I just learned this really fun bio stuff about you. And I was just wondering if you could, how do you get involved in these kind of things? You were a body double for Demi Moore and Penelope Cruz. You also detangle whales and you speak Norwegian.
There's so many random facts, Allie.
But I love that stuff. I find it so interesting.
No, totally.
I have to say the fact that really got my husband's heart pitter-pattering 25 years ago was that I had hot tubs with Jerry Garcia.
Oh my God. My friends from high school right now are like, tell me more.
Right. And I was in the same muck. Anyway, so I used to do a lot of work in Hollywood because there were a lot of spas in that area. And I ended up doing a lot of work with Hollywood producers. I was an apprentice to an Ayurvedic doctor for quite some time. And so while she was writing books, I was the one who'd go out and speak and do treatments and then train spas on these very traditional Ayurvedic bodywork, etc. We ended up working with the cast of Friends, and we were on the set of Friends for a little while because one of the producers was really into it. So anyway, I got to know a lot of people in Hollywood, and sometimes I was down there working with spas or with individuals one-on-one who then became coaching clients. And they would be like, I'd get a call. Demi Moore's trapped in a restaurant, and there are a lot of paparazzi up front. Do you mind just running through? And that's what it was. So I wasn't in any movies. And then that happened a couple of times with Penelope Cruz because dark glasses and long dark hair and 15 years ago can get you you just rush past like you want nothing to do with paparazzi. And let me tell you, I would not wish that life on anyone.
I was just thinking that, like, gosh, no privacy. It's so overwhelming.
Yeah, it's pretty, people can get pretty vulgar when there's a degree of anonymity and ask and shout and do all sorts of things, but it's fun to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, another question I have is from that to detangling whales to working in Ayurvedic to you work with Deepak Chopra. What do you think has been the through line in all of those random experiences? I'm sure there's something that's been consistent.
Absolutely. It's been this coaching aspect, which I actually did not have a word for. And really, it's been that way since about I was 6 on the playground. I remember people would come to me and say, I did something I wasn't supposed to. How am I going to talk to my parents about it? And we remember between playing Dukes of Hazzard, we would then work out ways of what you could say and still get your point across. So it's always been there. And that part of the reason why I had so many different jobs is because they weren't fulfilling, but there was this golden thread or red thread. I might be thinking in Norwegian. Yes, they say red thread through all of this that had to do with supporting people in a certain type of way, which I now call coaching because I haven't thought of a better word for it.
Interesting. I used to play Dukes of Hazzard too. Like and actually every Friday, this is random, but every other Friday was payday for my parents. They were city school teachers. And so we would go out to Pizza Hut. It was like the big out, but we would have to get home for Dukes of Hazzard because I was like obsessed with Hazzard. And then I used to like pretend like I remember we had this silver Honda, and I would I would get out the windows.
Jump in the windows.
Yeah.
Not into the door. Oh yeah.
All right. So that's great. So
right.
So on to boundaries, which I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they might not understand boundaries in that way. But I think when it comes to the holiday season, it's like when you say yes to someone's stuffing when you don't want more, or you don't want to be high maintenance or a burden with your food allergies, or you feel guilty for saying no to invitations. And then obviously tension in relationships, past histories, conflicting political views. This will be an interesting one that make you just uncomfortable and detract from the experience. So what I love about your work is I think a lot of people, when they hear boundaries, they think of fences and keeping people out. But you have a completely different approach.
I do.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually didn't realize I had this approach until I started reading up about other people's or what people had written about boundaries and then hearing the advice. And I thought, what? Really? That works? Particularly if you're a kind person, because I think, and that was the angle I came at it with, because a lot of the traditional boundary advice that people get is unkind. So or makes you feel unkind, or makes you feel, can I use lower grade cuss words on this?
Oh, yeah. You use high grade ones too.
Carte blanche there, because it makes you feel like an ass, right? And so if you're a kind person and you care about other people, the last thing you want to do is feel like you're hurting them or feeling like an ass. So you do whatever you can to avoid those two things, which usually means sucking it up and feeling like your boundaries are being violated. So I see it differently. So back to the point you made, was a lot of people look at boundaries as keeping things out. This is the line in the sand. It doesn't get crossed, or then I go crazy on you, or whatever. The heart song would just went in my head. You don't cross this line. And I see it quite differently. I see as boundaries as what you want to cultivate and curate inside your life. And for me, that takes the attention away from trying to keep things out and feeling very defensive, but rather inviting what you want in. And then there are different layers of in that I suspect we'll probably talk about, but it's really about saying what you want to have come in. And it's like extending an invitation. Want to come over to my house? We're going to have, and you kind of lay out what your plan is, and then invite people to participate in that way. So I was just talking to I train coaches on this work, and we were talking the other days. I really almost see it as an instruction booklet for people to get, or a user's guide to get the best version of you. Because you're saying, I'm at my best when these things are going on. And while you might not specifically articulate it that way or verbally articulate it at all, because we don't walk around necessarily reading lists to people, hopefully, we can invite people to play on these terms. So it's about inviting things and people in as opposed to keeping things out. And yet, I also feel like it's a lot like Glinda the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz. She comes in that bubble. To me, that bubble is a semi-permeable membrane. You can have anything you want to come out, but your stuff can go out. But you could get to really be at choice with what you have come in. But you're still of the world. You're still participating in it. You just really choose what is in your space.
And I'm sure there's a way that you will explain, like you're saying, I'm doing this, with kindness and not coming off like an ass. So, right. I'm just thinking about with family in particular, especially around the holidays, how tricky it can be for people because there's so many triggers with, I might not get along with this person, or I don't want them in my space, or, at what capacity. And there's always arguments that start for people around this time of year. So how do you navigate that as far as, when you're talking about boundaries with people in particular,
right. Well, yeah. And this is about, this time we're going into is about as rich of an learning opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think there are a couple different things. You can be very proactive, and then you can also be responsive. So if you have the capacity in advance to be proactive, there's a lot you can do, but then also there's a lot we don't know what's going to come at us. And so that's the being responsive part. In the proactive piece, you can ask for what you want. You can ask for what other people want. So you might say to your mother-in-law, we're really looking forward to our trip, or whatever is true for you, because it has to be honest and true, or it's insincere, and that never plays well. That never folds out in the way you want it to. So we're looking forward to the trip. I'm wondering what all you're hoping this experience is like, what you want to get out of it. We're also hoping to take a little side trip to this park and see some other friends of ours too. So what is really important to you, and really kind of find out what their expectations are to the greatest degree that you can in advance, so that you can try to meet those expectations. Because often I think boundary violations are a whole series of unspoken and unmet expectations, or unmanaged expectations.
So it's whatever poor communication usually on both ends.
That's a lot of it. And instead of saying, don't seat me next to Uncle Phil and da-da-da-da-da, you can say, I would really love to meet so-and-so's cousin's new partner, something like that. Can you seat me next to whatever your situation looks like, but really kind of asking for those pieces you want, but framing it in kindness instead of, I can't stand to sit next to that racist bigot. Hey, I haven't had a chance to catch up with so-and-so for a while, and really frame it to what you want to invite in. The other aspect, and feel free to rein me back in, because I'm abstract random, so I can keep going in various directions, is really understanding what is important to you. And I say, that boundaries are really values in action. So, and this is where the kindness piece comes in, but really any value that is important to you, or that you have. So let's say your value is respect. And now you're sitting next to grumpy Uncle Phil, who can't believe so-and-so won. Whatever.
Who would that be?
Right. Exactly. But if you have a bottom line or a boundary of respect, you know that instead of letting him in to your life, you need to approach this conversation with respect. He gets to come, and I use this metaphor, boundaries are like a garden, and the garden gate is the bottom line. Maybe in this case, maybe it's respect. So, instead of letting him into that garden, you come out to the garden gate and treat him with respect. Treat that conversation with respect. If it gets to a place where it becomes disrespectful, you let him know, oh gosh, it's really important to me that you feel respected in this conversation I'm having with you. And I I might need a break. Can we return to this a little later? Or for one of my values is humor. So I use humor a lot. Uncle Phil, what?
You haven't changed a bit.
Oh, I know there's a big liberal heart in there. You're just kidding around or whatever. Whatever's appropriate for the individual.
So it sounds like the whole point is for non-confrontation. Do you ever feel, though, that there is a place for confrontation?
Oh, absolutely.
With two individuals,
Absolutely. So I think this is less non-confrontation than it is confrontation on your terms, is what I would say. Or you're really being, what am I trying to say? Conscious and intentional about that. But I think in terms of confrontation, I have the same rules of engagement, for lack of a better term. It has to meet my values. And that's my boundary. So if go back to respect, I know that confrontation has to be respectful. And so what do? I turn that value into a verb. I approach it respectfully. And I usually find people are really happy to pick up on that and approach it the same way. I'm sorry, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just thinking, there are definitely people that you'll come across in your life that are that trigger you, a lot, as family in particular, right? Because you have a relationship with them, a history with them from your past. And sometimes that person can evoke a feeling within you that you're like, oh man, there's that 15-year-old inside of me that I haven't seen in a long time. And so you have this choice that you can make whether or not you're going to let him or her unleash in that moment, or make the decision to say, you know what, I want to do this respectfully, because nobody's going to feel good in this conversation. I won't feel good. I'm going to make them not feel good. So you have to make that choice. And you have to take that step back before it happens, be proactive.
Absolutely. And so there are these roles that we occupy in our families, right? And when we get back into a family get-together, we tend to step back into those roles. It's very common. And that's that 15-year-old perhaps who would really unleash. And the thing is, that would feel good. It would feel good to open up and unleash as that 15-year-old. And I think that's the temptation. First of all, that those neural paths are already paved for us. We know exactly what to do. It's easy. They're like pea tracks in the snow. It's easy to just as opposed to taking a different course. So what I often ask my clients to do is think in that very split second, in a year from now, how do you wish you would have handled this? And I like that because we're taking you out of the heat of the moment where that 15-year-old's ready to pop, and possibly rightfully so, and thinking a year from now, how will I wish I would have handled this? And that usually then gives you a very clear crossroads and helps pave that other path to handle it in a way that you would feel proud of and glad you handled it down the road.
And what I love about your garden metaphor too is because sometimes that 15-year-old comes out because we weren't protected at the time, right? Like we didn't have the safety, the resources, the distance, whatever. But all of like that 15-year-old is a wounded self, right? And so it's your garden metaphor. It's like people can come in at different levels, right? And that's where your power is that some people are just going to come to the gate because our values don't align, or I'm not at a place where I can handle this political discussion. I'm just using that as, it's very top of mind. Well, but then some people I bet get to dig in the soil with you. And that's the more intimate conversations and those people, but that's on your choice. And I think, when I work with my clients in story revisions, we really get into some of the mental structures that keep us safe, like all or nothing thinking.
Right.
And I think it's this idea of like, I've got to give the same amount of respect to everyone, to Uncle John, to my mom, and it's like, there's different levels of what that looks like.
Yes. And I think in terms of respect as the bottom line, as I was referring to, that's actually ultimately respect for yourself, that you are working in a way that you feel is respectful. But so when I go into again, rein me back in if I'm going off course here, but when I talk about boundaries are like a garden, one of the metaphors I use, I think of different layers of the garden. So if we're in the middle and we think of concentric circles as the garden, you get to be the designer of that garden and really choose what grows where in relationship to you. So you think, what do you want these aspects of the garden to be? And what, you're going to live inside this. This is your world. And so the people who get to come into the garden at all, that's what I call the garden gate. And that's your bottom line. This is kind of this threshold. If they're going to be coming into your life to any degree, they have to be able to meet the condition of that layer. And the condition is your value. So the garden is actually layers of values coming closer to you in the middle. Okay. And that value then becomes instructive about, if you're not sure what to do, how you go about something. So let's say your values are kindness is your most intimate value or beauty or compassion or truth, any of these things, you know that in that ring, these are the people who operate in a place of compassion that come in. These are the people who at least have the potential to operate in a place of compassion. And that's at the layer then that they get to come into the garden. Now, again, you can walk out to any layer, and sometimes you have to move people into a different layer, and that's absolutely fine, just based on where you are. And there's also this, what I often am asked when I'm talking about this with clients is, well, shouldn't my husband or my mom or somebody really close to me, the should part, shouldn't they be in my closest layer? No, not necessarily. They need to be where you're in the layer that's going to have the relationship thrive, right? The healthiest soil for that relationship might be over here. And that is absolutely fine. My sister, when she was dealing, which is where the boundary work really came out of, things I couldn't say to my sister, the older sister, when she was dealing with this thing of consecutive relationships that were check every box on extreme abuse possible, I had to put her in her own garden. Because the way I was going to be interacting with her, she did not need somebody telling her what they should, what they thought she should do. She did not need to hear this. She needed compassion. So I had to take her out of the regular garden and kind of plant a separate garden over here. And that's how I operated with her while she was healing and working out of this. I was there for her, but it was very different soil that we were tending together.
I love that because I think, what you said was so beautiful before about these boundaries are so that people can have you at your best.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times part of those mental structures are either I'm happy or if I get what I want, the other person loses, right? It's like this,
or like a selfishness. I'm a selfish person.
Yep. Yeah. And I think what you're doing is people are their own worlds, their own gardens, and they need different things at different times. And so it's not for you to take that on, but it's where do you guys line up? You both get what you need. Because I think because people aren't great at communicating, I think a lot of subtext, and assumptions make things worse rather than saying, what are your expectations for this? What do you want from this? When I was reading through your work and I read that, I was like, that feels so intimate. I mean, it feels holy. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if people are used to having those kind of conversations with.
They're not. Yeah. I'll tell you right now.
Well, I know.
But just, the idea of, communicating with a friend. And I'll give an example. When Mackie and I first got together, we've been in a relationship romantically for 6 years, but before that we were friends for a while. And we went on a work trip together, and I said to him, we were sharing like a hotel room, and so we would be spending a lot of time together at this conference. And I said, I need to spend time by myself while I'm here. So I'm going to be going off on a walk for a couple hours, and I don't want you to come with me. And, this is what I need for myself. And, a lot of people aren't used to that, and they could take it personally and think, oh God, I'm driving this person crazy, or they don't want to be near me. It's like most of the time it has nothing to do with the other person. It's just what my garden needed tending. I needed to go take a walk in it by myself. I didn't want any company. I think that we're often too afraid of what the other person is going to think and how they're going to react or judge, or they're going to interpret that as like you not wanting them. But if everybody just kind of took that off the table, it would be an amazing thing.
Well, I think we also feel so sensitive ourselves that we are like, oh, this would feel devastating if someone said that to me, when it's because we're sensitive.
Yeah. Everybody wants to feel like they're wanted and loved. And so they don't want to feel rejection. And a lot of times we'll interpret things as rejection.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're both. Hallelujah. Yeah, I'm totally on board. And so I think part of what can change that, and Juliet, kudos to you for saying that and asking that. And you did that, which is very, very cool and often awkward for people because they're not used to doing that. I think often the way we say it, and if we can look at it, is me doing this for myself trust me, is a gift for everybody else. I hear people who are really into yoga or exercise and say, listen, you want me to have my yoga, or you want me to have the coffee, whatever their thing is. It's really ultimately a gift. Listen, I'm making this small investment. It's not that I don't want you to be with me. It's just that when we are together, I want to be good. I don't want to be a smartass or whatever that is. So I think, if you're saying, I'm going to, especially if you could do it in advance, that was brilliant. I'm going to need take a little time. It's my downtime. Just consider it like I'm spending extra time in the bathroom or whatever. That's going to help get that message across. And I just want to be better for when we're together.
And Randi, you put a boundary around kind and nice. And I think that's an important differentiation because that's the kind thing. But I think a lot of us, we want to be nice, right?
Yeah.
So, like, but that sacrifices then feel like resentment and anger and exhaustion and depletion come from nice versus I love when you said kindness takes a stand for something bigger than pleasantry. Kind is the high road. Can you expand?
I shall.
Yeah, I love taking the high road. It just sounds good. Yeah.
Royalty, right?
And that's always easy too, right? So I think, well, first of all, I would say right now, I think nice is getting a bad rap because nice in my world has to do with manners. It has to do with not being a jerk. It's really just pleasantries. There is a place for that, and that's absolutely fine. But nice doesn't really necessarily evolve beyond that. And that's the risk. And so if Juliet with her partner had said, okay, I'll just go along with she's being nice, she's going with the flow. Nice is going with the flow. Okay. Pleasantries, not rocking the boat. Kind is taking a stand for those values I was talking about. Okay. So, and there are kind ways and there are nice ways to get that across. There are kind ways of getting that across, but ultimately you're taking a stand for something that's kind. Now, the example I tend to use in my courses is a little extreme, but I use it for the sake of an example. I have a friend who has not had a drop of alcohol in 25 years. It's a lot of work. And we were out together and I said, I really would like a beer. Oh, this day has sucked. I just really want a beer or a cigarette or whatever that might be. And the nice thing might be, hold on, I'll get one. I'm gonna get you your first beer in 25 years. Or, I'm doing it up a little bit there, but it might feel polite to oblige this person with what they want. Oh, I can fix this. I'm going to go and get this person a beer. Whereas the kind thing might be, not on my watch. I need to stand up to you because I know how hard you've worked for this, and I'm not going to be the friend that lets you do it or that does it on my watch. And so again, that's kind of an extreme situation because it's easy to delineate what might be okay and what might be less okay there. But ultimately, that's what I think it comes down to. Kindness is taking a stand for those things that are important to us.
Not being a people pleaser.
Not being a people pleaser and really taking a stand for what you want to have in the world. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, because I think about when you use that example, it's like, oh my God, that's the high road. Like, that's like, I don't know, it just seems so much difference of saying like, no, I'm really being your friend. I think sometimes we think love is really codependency.
Yeah.
Where love is very fierce and loving, but not just when it's convenient. I think like
love is not coddling someone.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the same with kindness. Kindness can be fierce, but it's taking a stand for something better. And I think when we don't take that stand for whatever, we're ultimately saying to that person, actually, I don't think you can do any better. So let's just let it go. And I'm saying when you're being kind, and particularly when it's a hard topic, you're saying, I think you've got it in you. I think you're going to understand why I'm not going to take this extra helping the stuffing. I think you can get it. And so ultimately, I think it's honoring something in them as well, too.
Yeah. Do you think, because I know you work at a Norwegian language camp, you speak Norwegian. Do you think this
That's a great one?
Well, another random fact. No,
Randy. No, because the way that she's thinking about this and the way it's very, I feel like it's not the way our culture thinks.
It's not American.
It's not. I don't think it is. I think Americans are there's this idea that we can do it all on our own. There's this independent, you're in control, where I don't believe that. So do you think I think we need each other and I think there's limits. Yeah. And so do you think knowing these other languages, I'm just curious because when you learn another language, you learn a whole other mindset and way of relating. How do you think that's influenced your perspective and your experience then with your own boundaries?
I'm sure it's influenced in ways I'm never going to fully be able to understand and articulate. And I'm aware of a lot of what it's done. I lived in France for a while without speaking very good French.
Me too.
Oh, okay. And then my experience in Norway and just learning other languages. First of all, I can tell you that a lot of Germanic languages are very direct. They don't beat around the bush so much. So like, I love the actual word for pencil sharpener in Norwegian is pencil eater. It's just very
pencil eater.
But when you look at that, there's no like posturing or gonna really couch this and nice stuff. It's just very direct, and it's still said very kindly. Pencil eater, or something. You think that's because it's a good direct translation, but there's less. And then also when you're learning another language, you're really kind of drilling down to what you can say to get across. You're getting very specific, and asking for what you want or need, because you might not even have the whole vocabulary right there. So you have to get very specific in asking for what you want. But I do think culturally, I'm sure that has influenced me a lot. Yeah. You made me think of something else that'll pop back into my head.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's right. I do want to circle back with you. So say that we go into the holidays thinking about what our values are, or fleshing out our values, and we think about the experiences that trip us up, that may trip us up. Or so we go in there and we practice this, and then someone tries to violate our boundaries. How do you, I mean, even stand your ground sounds so, I'm just thinking like the Florida laws, gun laws, like stand your ground sounds so confrontational, or like, I feel like for kind people that would kind of send their nervous system like, oh my God, they're creeping in, they're coming into this patch where I didn't really, this is my organic patch, you know, and this is weird.
That's your fertilizer.
Yeah. I spent so long cultivating these green beans and roses, you know, but what is your advice for that?
Walk them into a different part of the garden. So where would you feel comfortable with them? And so let's go over here and talk about this. And or you know what, I'm going to actually let you enjoy this. I found this book I think you're going to love, or something like that. Or have you met Dan? Something to where it doesn't have to be this huge confrontation, but it can be, you know, I'm really not comfortable with this joke. That is a stand for kindness, actually, doing that in a respectful manner. But I think to get back to your question, you take them to a different part of the garden, or you take them to the garden gate. You know, you can hang out here for a little while. And you understand why it's kind for them. You certainly understand why it's kind for you, but you also see why it might be a kind thing for them, and invite them to do that. And
this
that might be a
takes the level, though, of, I feel like, of self-confidence you have to cultivate in order to be like self-assured enough to do this. You know, how do you build that up with someone who maybe their whole life has been very introverted, never spoken up for themselves, you know, so how do you go from that person to being able to clearly state your boundaries?
Yes. So when I teach this, I have this metaphor methodology. And one of the first ones we talk about is boundaries are like a muscle, meaning at first this is heavy. It's hard to lift. You have not used this muscle before. It's underdeveloped. And I think that's what you're speaking to. You don't necessarily have the confidence of, here, let's go to this other part of the garden at this point. So you start with lighter things. In time, that muscle gets a lot stronger to the point you don't even realize you're doing these things. But when that muscle is weak, that's when you excuse yourself. That's when you change the topic to something else. And I think my biggest hint when people are in this space is act as though people are going to respond in a way you want them to, because that really it feels more like an invitation rather than the back off big guy type of thing. You know, I think you're really going to enjoy this over here, or let's talk about you for a while or something. And you go ahead and proceed in a way that they're probably just going to fall right in line and join you and really enjoy that invitation. And that is so powerful. And I think the key to that is understanding what you want to have happen instead. So if it's that you want to take a break, you put out an invitation for everybody, hey, I'm going to take a break. I'll see you later. You just extended an invitation to see them later. And it's those small things that start to build up your confidence. I don't recommend going for the biggest boundary bullseye right away. Because first of all, it's probably going to backfire, and then you're going to feel even worse. So if you can start with these smaller weights and start picking up things that aren't as higher stakes, it's going to get a lot easier over time. But those higher stakes things, so I feel like our lives are like a spider web. I love metaphors. Into our bodies. When you pull on one section of the web, everything else adjusts a little bit, right? It's all connected. Our bodies are like that. If you have a bound knot of fascia, when you loosen that in your shoulder, wow, my hips just loosened up too. Everything is connected. So even when you're making small moves, so to speak, or picking up these small weights, while it might not have this dramatic effect right away, other things do start to shift. And that's where I think when you're clear about what these boundaries are, and you think about them as ways of inviting things in, that can really change how people go along with the program, so to speak.
Now, we're specifically talking about boundaries right now with family and the holidays, but
and friends too, I think.
And friends.
A lot of people family of choices.
But there are boundaries within yourself that you can start working on, and how you are with your health, for example. The food choices you're making, there are boundaries to set with that. And I like to use that with my clients to help them start to make healthier decisions with their eating, rather than looking at as I'm depriving myself. It's like, you're not depriving yourself. You're starting to create healthy boundaries around what you're eating and respecting yourself for the first time.
Yes.
And what you want. Like if you want, I know Randy had a toddler that did not like to sleep, but I'm thinking like boundaries around sleep. If you don't have a toddler that can't sleep, like you're not missing out on one more Netflix show. You're giving yourself, 8 hours of sleep or something like that. Kind of what that is, like what you're inviting in as
right. Yes. And I can tell you, as somebody who just recently spent a lot of time with a cardiologist, I have to really change some things about how I've been eating. And in the past, I think it would have felt like deprivation. And now when I don't eat something, I figure I'm probably giving myself another day of life.
You're reframing it.
Absolutely. Reframing it in a really big way. And that has really changed how I feel about some things. Like it's a little extreme. And when it comes down to it, and I'm at the end, I'm thinking, I would have liked one more day. Who knows what that day could have been? Was it really worth the whatever I ate or smoked or whatever? And that thing. And so I reframe it big time into something I'm giving myself. So I'm not having this because I'm getting that.
Yeah. And building that little muscle. And one way that, people can do that is when they go out to restaurants, and a lot of times they're too intimidated, or they don't want to make a fuss over ordering something on the menu and changing that item. Can you make this for me this way? Or can I have this on the side? That seems like such a small thing, but it's a big thing for people, because they don't want to look bad, or they don't want to feel like they're on a diet in front of other people. But that's
that they're trying.
Or that they're trying. Yeah. But that's creating those healthy boundaries for yourself.
Absolutely. And my son, I found out pretty early on, he has some pretty substantial food allergies. So that has become something that wasn't an inconvenience to saving his life at a restaurant. And that really switches how you think about it. And so a possible way to think about that, if I may, is think, this chef is really good. I want to see what they can do. I have so much faith that the chef is going to knock it out, and say, if we could get this on the side, that would be great. We're not offending anybody by that. I think if anything, you're having confidence that this restaurant can do a really nice job.
Yeah. And I always tip, because I have I can't have gluten. So I tip when they go above and beyond to be like, oh, wait, we found out this, or we mix this fryer. And, because I know too, like my sister has celiac and a ton of other food allergies. And I've seen the results if she is not, it's kind of, if she doesn't stick to those. And we always make sure to tip. And then, the restaurants that you go to and they get rewarded. And
if you go someplace and they give you a hard time, don't go there. Simple as that.
I have found
don't give them your business.
I have found that particularly because I've started to talk about, my son can't have this or that, and not that you have to go there, but they're happy they helped.
Yeah.
They're really kind of proud they could step up and do that.
Totally.
And because they don't want anybody going into anaphylactic shock on their watch.
Yeah, right.
Well, I find chefs, they're artists, right? And artists like the connection. Like, I think it's kind of part of that mentality of like, if I get what I want, someone else is going to be put out, and I feel like a burden, when it's like, no, it can be win-win, and everyone can rise to a new level of understanding and intimacy or whatever, I use the word intimacy, but I mean deeper connection.
Sure. I remember my dad would say this to my mom a lot, and I hope I'm not saying anything out of school here, that if they were in an argument or something and she was in non-communication mode, or he was, or whatever, he would say, I don't read minds. Just tell me. And what a gift it was for to understand what that person's thinking, even if they don't think you want to hear it, or that it might be inconvenient, or you're removing that unknown. And so in this case, we don't have to have the restaurant guess, are they the customers that need that? Oh man, I really don't want anybody passing that out. So there are lots of different ways you can look at that, but most of the time, asking for what you want is ultimately a gift.
When did you start your coaching practice? Because your coaching practice is specifically healthy boundaries for kind people, right?
No.
I
actually, but I can understand why you would think that, because it's been a big thing of mine. So my coaching practice started about 12 years ago. And the last 5 years, I've had a pretty big healthy boundaries kick, healthy boundaries for kind people. So I've started off as a regular one-on-one life coach, which I still a visceral feeling when I say that word. I don't think it's the right word yet, but a friend of mine's a linguist, and he also hasn't come up with the right word.
Life coach you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that word.
I understand what you mean. It's so broad. It doesn't really.
Well, Randi, I love your mission, though. I'll let you say it, but about helping.
I'm about helping women in particular find their truth and be at peace with it, and doing the work to be at peace with that and articulate that. So that comes across in lots of different ways. So in Healthy Boundaries, it's about finding what's true for you and what you want to cultivate inside your life, and then learning ways to articulate it that feel in alignment with who you want to be in the world. But my first big coaching program was actually something called Maybe Baby. And that was a program for women who are ambivalent about motherhood. Came directly out of my experience, very ambivalent about motherhood, but you're starting to wondering, will I regret this someday? Having a child or not having a child? And so
that's where I am. We should talk.
Hire
her, not for the podcast listeners.
Oh, yeah.
But I think knowing our truth, and in the case of Maybe Baby, it's one of the biggest conversations we're not having, because the people we do have it with all have a secret hope of what we'll do, or I think agenda is a strong word, but they have an agenda or something like that. So, and that has to do with truth across the board. So I also run a program called the Viking Woman Workshop, using my prowess with Nordic knowledge, but using that as the Viking woman as an archetype, then as a lens to look at your own life. And I also mix a lot of mythology, lore, and culture and history into that. I don't do that in all my programs, but for me, all the work across the board, and I also I do executive coaching, so I do a lot of Fortune 5 coaching too, is about finding your truth, what's true for you, doing the work to be at peace with it, and being able to articulate it in a way that feels in alignment with who you are. That's very important to me.
I think that piece about being at peace with it is equally as important. And I think it actually probably goes hand in hand with what your truth is, because something like a baby, right, is, you may feel like, I don't want one. And then you feel uncomfortable because it's not the cultural norm.
Exactly.
People certainly have judgments about women. Oh my God. I laugh when people think it's selfish to not have children. I'm like, that is the most environmentally friendly thing you could ever do for this planet. But that's a whole other, but then living that peace is, I think, a different part of that equation.
Oh, yes. It's almost like, I think a lot of times people don't want to know their truth, because then they have to do the work to be at peace with it, or they're uncertain of how to find peace with it. And that just seems too big. So it's much easier not to actually land on what's true for us.
I think one of the things that I love the most about you, I share this meme with some of my own clients, is that I think pretty much illustrates this point exactly as you go. If it's not a hell yes, it might be you are a rich, complex, and deeply thoughtful individual. And I love that, because, and that's what I was talking about at the top of the hour, when you first get into this entrepreneurial game, people have these like, go big or go home. If you're not killing yourself, you left yourself on all this stuff that I'm just like, oh my God, I do not want to enter into battle to help people. But the truth is nuanced. And it's, I remember there was someone at this round of Truths with Food. She wasn't quite sure if it was the time to sign up for her. And I was like, let's chat. And I'm not a hard seller. And the deadline was that Friday. And I said, look, I think you need some time. And I told her about this quote. And I was like, because you probably don't know definitely. And I read that quote to her, and she goes, oh my God, that's how I feel all the time. Like, I can see things from different angles. And she took the weekend. She ultimately decided not to take food. And I felt really good, because I wouldn't have wanted her in the program if it wasn't, but if I would have made her decide right then, I would have been uncomfortable the entire time she was in it, thinking maybe this wasn't right. This was not, but
not every decision comes from an epiphany.
Exactly.
And that's what everybody is looking for now, especially in our culture, because it is a go big or go home. Like, everything has to be a hell yes. Oh my God, I'm so excited. It's not, that would be amazing, right? If that was the case. But the reality of it is, things are more mundane than we give them.
Well, they're complex. They're complex.
But if you can learn to enjoy, and when I use the word mundane, I'm not using it, negatively, but if you can learn to just live into the regular, the everyday, then the nuances, you can find your truth within that. It doesn't have to come where, you read these stories where you wake up in the middle of the night and there's, a light bulb and
the fireworks. And yes.
Or you think of an Elizabeth Gilbert book, right? Where she's in the bathroom floor crying and Eat, Pray, Love. And it's like all of a sudden it comes to her what she needs to do with her life.
But that had been boiling. And I really like her, but didn't she already have a book contract before she set off to that like adventure? I think she did.
She's a published author. She has a couple of.
Yeah. But when there's not information there, just like we don't know what our boundaries are, we fill in. America loves the upward mobility narrative. We love that rags to riches. We pull down our heroes so we can pull them back up. We love that all or nothing extreme, but that's not, I love when I was watching Shark Tank one night and this guy came in and he was pitching this circus act to Vegas. And he's like, we're going to be an overnight success. And the one shark was like, overnight successes take 15 years. And I was like, exactly.
And that's so refreshing because where I am with my business, those are the things that I'm like, oh, thank God it takes, it's nice to hear that.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. And truth is nuanced and sometimes truth is mundane. And I don't wrap myself up to be maybe egotistically so, but I still think it's true. So simple that everything is hell yes. I wouldn't be married if I thought that. I wouldn't have a child. And not that, oh goodness, thank goodness I saw the light, but thank goodness I took the time for my truth. And that's the difference. And some things are a hell yes.
Truth is a very hard thing to find for people because of, the social normalities that we're trying to always navigate. And then what's deep within our heart and soul is hard to understand and cultivate if you're not used to doing that. So I'm sure that's a lot of the work that you do with your coaching is trying to get people to listen to their intuition.
It's huge. And, sometimes something I do in Maybe Baby, and actually I did it with a client just the other day in Healthy Boundaries for Kind People, were to sort out all their beliefs that they had about something. And I actually wrote each thing on an index card. I think she had about 300 index cards. And then I said, okay, now sort out which ones are yours and which ones belong to your mom. Or some other person. And she really was able to distinguish at that time what was actually her truth she needed to work with. At that time, she was carrying everybody's stuff and everybody in trying to manage their emotional responses to things. So let's just work with yours.
That is a great tool just for listeners out there to do. If you take away something from today's call, I think doing that, writing down what your beliefs are about yourself, about the world, and then distinguishing which ones are yours and which ones are not. Whether it comes from another person or something you heard.
Yes. And I would say even with these holiday boundaries that we're looking at, okay, what are your beliefs if you don't take that second helping of stuffing? Write all of these down and it can be very quick. And then you just take those little Post-its or whatever and say, oh, actually, these are something, this is what I heard from a friend that people will think, or this is what I saw in that Facts of Life show that time, or different things that are ingrained. But when there are all these beliefs in our minds, we tend to think they're ours because they're in our minds. And so really sorting those out, I think, is super duper helpful. But the other thing I just wanted to say why I'm really passionate about people finding out what their truth is, doing the work to be at peace with it, is I truly, honestly believe that the more alignment we each individually are with what's true and right for us, the more the world shifts into alignment.
Okay? I love that.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And so if we're doing something that's disingenuous for ourselves or going along with the program, just not to make waves or whatever, and not even completely aware of that, I feel like we're doing a disservice to the world, because I think the more each of us can be in our truth, living that in a way that feels in alignment and in integrity with who we are, the more the world just switched toward truth, or just took a little toward being in alignment with what's true for the world. And it's a powerful thing. It is so powerful to find what is true for you and to live that. And in this case, it manifests through boundaries. And these boundaries are manifesting through the holiday season and with families and food. Can I share one more tip before I forget it?
Of course. Yeah, okay. I have a couple other things I want to add.
Okay. It's very germane to the holidays. And I found this one out. This was a hard-earned one.
There are those.
It's no gift to go into debt in order to give somebody a present. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I used to think, I want to do all these wonderful things. I had these grandiose ideas. Essentially, I was giving them the gift of my debt. Look, I can't afford this thing I got for you. Enjoy. And while
that's a tough one, even for not the holidays, but, I was a part of a bunch of weddings recently, and even, the expectations of the gift giving for those kinds of, events, it's hard. It's a hard thing to navigate for people because you don't want to look bad, but and the expectation of how much to give, how much the plate cost, how much, for gift giving on the holidays, how much, what gift they might give you and what you're going to give them in return. There's always that, I have to match it or go above and beyond.
Which really takes away what we always say to kids. It's the thought that matters. Right?
The thing is, people don't act on that. And we all need a reality check with that.
I remember my dad saying to me something, it was probably my sister actually, to be honest, she won't mind me saying that, but I remember him having a response to something one of us had asked that we wanted. And he's like, wait, you're asking me to go into debt for this? You're asking me to dip into my retirement fund? Really? Is that really what you want to ask of me? And it was like, well, no, not really. But ultimately, what we're doing with the energy behind giving something, getting, is we're also recipients of the energy behind it. And I don't want to pass along the energy of debt to people I love.
That anxiety, the stress, that's not worth it.
Mm-mm. Well, and I think it comes back to too, people don't, there's a lot of, you can go put a lot on credit cards. Like a lot of our friends don't know what our financial state is. And not that we have to explain to them, hey, I went to grad school and I started my own business, right? But
you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to.
But right. Well, that's what I'm saying. But I do think that if they're true friends, or if you really have a relationship there at all, and coming to them with, I know we normally exchange gifts or this or that, but it's been a rough year for me. And I think most people, like Randi said, act as if people will respond the way you want them to. I think they will understand. I think people are more kind and generous often than we give them. Some people.
I think that's the case. And the people who are going to care will get it.
Yeah.
You'll definitely get it. And the ones who aren't going to be like, whatever, anyway, they might not be primed to get it. That's okay. We can't change that.
Yeah. And I love, you talk about self-care at the deepest level. Like, yeah, green juice and yoga are okay, but self-compassion. And I think when you're trying to work and build those muscles of boundaries, you're not going to get it perfect every time. Some people may leave, out of your life. I think new ones will come in, but I think remembering that, do you have any tips for that, Randi, when it's like, oh, it doesn't go quite as you thought it would, or you try to stand your ground and you worry you piss someone off, or you accidentally, they trampled your garden.
That's why I love the garden analogy so much, or the garden metaphor, because sometimes there's shit and then you use it to enrich the future experience and, fertilize that garden. Not to be really trite with that, but take what didn't go well and learn from it and use it for the next time. A big thing that I think is overlooked when we have messed up or didn't go quite the way we wanted was the acknowledging it and taking responsibility. I think, that did not come out the way I intended it in my mind. I'm afraid I may have hurt you more. I am very sorry about that. Clearly there's a different conversation I wanted to have. I'm not in a place where I can have that right now, but I just want to let you know, I am so sorry I hurt you.
That's taking the high road. That's the definition of the high road right there.
Mm-hmm. But I think what's cool about that, and I often forget, is it removes all that hiding that you have to do otherwise. Like, oh gosh, I can't believe they said that or something. But just say, listen, I own it. Done. I've learned from that, and then learn from it. I think that's kind of key.
Yeah. And I found that with relationships where I've had those, I would say they're more difficult than go with the flow. Those relationships also are like, Juliet, you and I just had one of those about the podcast, and we were so honest and transparent. And I walked out of there being like loving you even more, and I said, like, even because we were just like, with all collaborations, you got to revisit. And I think both of us had enough respect, and that we even brought it up, and we came out, I feel like, stronger than when we went in. And
it's this saying, like, secrets keep you sick, or hiding, or not speaking your truth. It does. It will make you feel sick to your stomach.
You resent the person.
The lump in your throat that you have, that you're carrying around, all of that is that you're not speaking your truth. So when it comes to that communication with someone, if you can just say, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and open it up, so amazing what comes out of that. It's not it's not as bad. It's not going to be bad like you think it is. You know, what you project onto it is not, you know, the story you make up of what's going to happen when you actually confront that person is just know it's 1,000 times worse. Your made up fairy tale about it is worse than what's actually going to happen.
And I think a tip, because, you know, Randi, you were saying if you try to lift a deadlift, your boundaries can backfire. I think one of the things I work on with my clients is when they're seeing a situation, there's often this like defensive tensing up that you don't even know is there because your own emotional state. So I always recommend people like soften into the conversation. And my clients find that really helpful because it's like, oh, I didn't even know I was coming at this in a defensive way that can then often make the other person react defensively and then it backfires. But I think that tip of like softening in and like bringing your own empathy and your own, like, I think of like a porcupine, you know, it carries around those like needles, but it's because it has like such a soft underbelly. You know what I mean? It's protecting something there. I know.
Yes.
And I think as someone who is very sensitive, I think sometimes I look at situations so like defensive. And in the beginning, before I started coaching myself and, you know, becoming a coach, I didn't even realize I was bringing that tension or that expectation. So I think that's really helpful for people as they practice this. One more question for you, Randi.
Sure.
You were talking about like the energy and life becomes a little more truth. What are your spiritual beliefs? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm pretty transparent, which is probably one of them, actually. I don't have a certain, what am I trying to say, a thing I go by. I just do what's true for me, actually. What's very true for me. And that has a lot to do with truth. I am very much somebody who feels my spirit is revived when I've been outdoors. So I try to spend a lot of time outdoors or detangling whales. I believe in, so I don't know if this is quite what you're getting at, but I'm happy to talk about it or put it out there. I believe in our souls come around for different lessons, and those are always evolving, and that we're here to find what's true for us and live that. And that is the lesson of this lifetime, and do that in a way that's kind and good. And eventually, I think as you evolve, that soul evolves, you actually start helping not just helping other people do that, but really taking a stand so that other people can live their truth. And I think that's where it comes into civil rights, it comes into humanitarian aid, things like that, when people are starting to get to that point. And when I say evolve, that doesn't mean better than, that just means you're at a different place with what's important to you. So
do you believe in reincarnation?
I believe in, because I studied Ayurveda for a long time, I had to understand what that meant, that side of the whole Ayurvedic world. And for me, I say souls come back. That's what I think. And sometimes we're grouped right together. And I remember thinking this even when I was a little kid. And then I was watching Oprah one day, and there's this guy, Ainsley, what's his name? I was just looking at his book. Ainsley, he's Scottish, so something. I think it is McLeod, but I'm not totally sure. And he described exactly what I thought. And I was like, yes, yes. And he was this medium, and so people weren't going to have, people are going to be skeptical. And I was like, yes, this is what I've been saying. This is what I've been feeling my whole life. Yeah. So whatever that's worth.
Good. I'm curious. Yeah, because I know you and I both are big believers of paradox and yin and yang.
Yes.
And I love that you think, because I view things similarly, but I've been going on at my own, like my grandma had believed that was her truth. And she passed away last year. But I also realized, I think that she believed in reincarnation because she also gave everyone like multiple chances in life. So I'm like, oh my God, her spiritual views matched the empathy and the the support that she gave people. So, but I like asking people who are very into depth and truth and beauty what they think. So,
yeah, I think ultimately truth is it sounds a little great bumper sticker, but I think truth and kindness are really guiding principles for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would like to drive behind your vehicle. I would. That was your bumper sticker. Like, oh, I like that person.
I love get lines for life coaches.
And then I would be like, they're definitely driving a Prius, aren't they?
Or I love when you see the really kind bumper stickers, but those are the people that are like annoyed at the walkers or like running through the red light.
Oh my gosh. I just think sometimes we are the Whole Foods parking lot where all the be kind and all one. And I'm just like some of the worst manners I've ever seen driving. The entitlement just seeps through the all is one. It's my turn.
Totally. It's like they say, if you see the Buddha, kill it, because it's like someone claiming to be Buddhist. That's what we always said. My dad was like so Zen because he would never say he was Zen. Like he's just like,
he just was.
He is. Yeah. He's like, I just believe in nature. It's the only thing I can count on, the sun rising and setting every day. And he's like totally a Buddha, but he would never say that. So
exactly.
So Randi, this has been so wonderful. Juliet, do you have any like closing questions?
Well, just so you had elaborated, and this will just bring our listeners to help find you. But so you had said the different kinds of coaching that you were doing. And so particularly now, I know you work with like Fortune 500 companies, executive coaching, and you do take on clients one-on-one. And do you have a particular coaching style that you're doing, or all of those that you were describing you work with?
I do all of those. And I take clients one-on-one. The bulk of my people right now are in courses.
Okay.
By that, I mean, it's essentially group coaching, and I'm also training coaches and lawyers and doctors with this whole healthy boundaries for kind people idea. But I do work one-on-one. And actually next year I'm starting, I still don't know completely what it looks like, but I'm going to be expanding the healthy boundaries work and the Maybe Baby, but then also adding a program called Depressed Like Me, particularly for entrepreneurs and other people who have this high functioning, low grade depression, dysthymia that you're kind of always there, because that's very much the case for me, when you just find like, why am I not getting ahead? Why? And so have that be some sort of touchdown.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Do you think most artists struggle with depression, like on and off?
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. I think people who are doing work that requires sensitivity. And
I was just going to say, if you're a sensitive person and you can pick up on energies and the world, I mean, it's not like the entire world is a happy, friendly, nurturing place. So if you're a person with empathy and a person who has sensitivity, then I think most of us have a low grade depression.
Absolutely. Cause I think you're just picking up on that. And I wrote my probably only full-fledged viral piece I've written so far was the love note to the hypersensitive and takers of it too personally. And it really speaks to that I actually think, you feel like a canary in the coal mine of our culture, and you're the one who sees things we can't even possibly imagine for ourselves. You're the one who's carrying us forward. And I think that's really the case for those of us who are really sensitive and are prone to depression.
Yeah, I think that with those of us who get sick, those of us who have health issues, it's like people are like dismissing it, and I'm like, no, we are your warning signs. Like, learn from us rather than saying that we're crazy or that it's all in your head or something. But yeah, no, I love that. It's okay to be sensitive. I know most of my clients are really sensitive, and it's a superpower if you have the right boundaries.
Right.
I mean, I would rather feel a lot than not feel at all, because a life without feeling isn't. Then what do you have?
You phoned it in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You are Spock.
So, Randi, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me at randibuckley.com, and definitely spelled like RandiBuckley.com. They can find me there. I'm on Facebook a lot. I gave up on Twitter.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
It's dying, apparently, so.
Because we left.
I don't know how much of an impact I made on it. I tried very hard.
We have some in-person retreats coming up in 2017. I'm doing the Viking Women Workshop in Norway.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And taking the Healthy Boundaries for Kind People on the road, as well as Maybe Baby.
Everyone go check her out. It's such good coaching.
Aww.
And it's true. I actually don't like the coaching industry, what it's become, but you I love.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's rather profound. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I think the coaching industry can get pretty holier than thou and feel pretty pretentious at times. And it's just not who I want to be in the world.
Yeah.
So
I totally agree.
Just doing my own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go your own way.
Now I have that song. Thanks. Little Fleetwood Mac in there. Yep.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Randi.
Anytime. This is a blast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Insatiable podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can connect with us on social media. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Juliet Unite, and Allie at Allie M. Shapiro. M stands for Marie. Please feel free to also email us any questions. We would love to hear from all our listeners. You can reach us at Allie at alishapiro.com and Juliet at unitefitness.com. We'll see you next time.